Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. India's maritime interests काफी एक space है, and a lot of times we've said this on the show that India का map you need to just flip it upside down so that you actually see how big India's interest actually goes. हम लोगों को borders पे restrict करते हैं so that we don't think beyond that. But when we flip the map, we see the size of the Indian Ocean. There's a lot that India is doing in that. There's a lot that needs to be done. And आप सबको पता है, एक पुराना मैंने मैप आपको दिखाया था about India's maritime interest, what it should be. The famous eagle claw map that I had made. Now, how that thing is coming into fore, क्या चल रहा है, what is happening? Let's talk with Commodore Srikant, who will tell us what is the prime source of this interest and हम क्या कर रहे हैं to actually get to that. Sir, namaskar. Welcome to the show.
Namaskar. Thank you so much.
How do you see, we used to be thoda close to the coast. Ab to we are doing anti-piracy operation there. We've got satellite stations right down in the coast of Africa. We've got satellite stations coming up in Diego Garcia. We are doing exercises with the Philippines over there. We are doing exercises with the Greeks over there, that side in the Mediterranean. I mean, you see so slowly we see that India's hands are kind of opening out towards both the sides. What's the structure and what's the plan?
See, it is like this. As you brought out, the Indian Navy's growth and development has been transformational if you see it over 75 years, from less than half a dozen ships to now a carrier based, nuclear submarine based Navy. Now, obviously, any country which has a strong maritime orientation, such as ours, and you have brought out some of those yourself in the introductory talk, कि हमारा अगर आप लोकेशन देखिए हिंद महासागर में एकदम प्राइम रियल एस्टेट, the energy lanes of the word crisscross. These are some of the busiest traffic lanes. And Indian Ocean, though it's the smallest among the three oceans, it's also arguably the busiest ocean. So you see, at one level, as far as the oceans are concerned, we occupy a very advantageous position. At the same time, geopolitically, because geopolitics is all about geography, politics, and threats and interests, if you see the conditions or the cocktail of circumstances of having adversarial neighbors, a whole lot of maritime security challenges in the form of terrorism, piracy, illegal fishing, gun running, human proliferation. It means India is presented with a unique set of एक तरफ से अपॉर्चुनिटीज जो ओशन देती है और एक तरफ से चैलेंजेस जो ओशन पे या ओशन से होते हैं. So that determines our interest, and obviously also it is commensurate with India's rise in the world. We are now considered, we are one of the biggest economies in the world. We are a middle power, a rising power. We are amongst the rare democracies in this part of the world who are committed to some things on the global common. So we have to discharge our duty as a sort of, rising power too. We've also positioned ourselves, Pradhan Mantri ka famous Sagar vision ke upar, we have positioned ourselves as the preferred security partner and first responder in this region. So if you put all of them together, you need a blue water navy. और वो ब्लू वाटर नेवी आज हमारे पास है, एंड एक बार ब्लू वाटर नेवी है, आपका इमेजिनेशन, जोग्राफिक इमेजिनेशन, it expands. If you see our first strategy document, which came about 20 years ago, we defined our areas of interest in a slightly more limited way. In 2005 maritime strategy document, we included areas in the Indo-Pacific, on the African coast, and all that as our primary or secondary areas of interest. So obviously, geographic imagination, when on the oceans, also expands as your navy expands and as your own country's responsibilities expand, both regionally and globally.
So when you talk about, globally, तो it's a पड़ा है वो तो. I mean, हमारा
बिल्कुल.
role है, हम every time there is some disaster somewhere, we are there. Navy ships are there, evacuations, and a whole lot of stuff that we've done. We've shown that, I would say, the prowess and the capability of doing stuff like this.
Yeah,
Now, when you
yeah,
expand,
yeah.
so there are patrolling points. We all know that Indian Navy has 7, 8, 10 patrolling points around the Indian naval region, जहाँ पर आपकी permanent presence है.
Yes, yes.
Navy operates in that region. There are assets which are allocated to those particular regions from the Western Fleet, the Eastern Fleet. So they go in their separate directions. They do all sorts of exercises. They do all sorts of missions and whatever
Yeah,
comes in their entire thing. In the middle of it, we also have anti-piracy operations, which are, a lot in the Myanmar region and a lot in towards the coast of Africa. A lot of, Red Sea Houthis and all that nonsense also started up. So, sir, there's also a need for that aspect of it, high seas patrolling, which, if we need to dominate this region, the rule of law needs to be established by us. How well do you think we are doing that at the moment? And आगे जाके आपको और क्या-क्या चीजें चाहिए होंगी to actually get that thing done? Because एक चीज तो है सर, आप
हाँ,
जितने assets अभी लगा रहे हो, they're also getting used. You need more maintenance, you need more, numbers in terms of the asset which is actually happening. थोड़ा बहुत चल रहा है उसके अंदर. So what do you think is the game here, sir?
देखिए आपने दो तीन चीजें कहा, बिल्कुल वो मैं मानता हूँ. We have today a range of responsibilities, and therefore we have mission deployed ships. And this mission deployment philosophy started some 7 8 years ago. We have mission deployed ships in different parts of the world in our areas of interest, largely in the Indian Ocean region at different places, as you said, different geographies, in some cases close to political, volatile regions, in some places close to the choke points. So there are permanently or quasi permanently deployed assets there which act as first responders. उसके बाद जैसे रिक्वायरमेंट होता है हम बकायदा और जहाज भेजते हैं. पर आपने जरूर एक बात ठीक कहा कि beyond 12 nautical miles, which is beyond the national borders, and beyond 200 nautical miles, which is beyond the EEZ, जो एक होता है areas beyond national jurisdiction. Now that is the great, you can consider it the great unknown, or you can consider global common, where everyone has a right to move. But when you say everyone, that place is also often frequented by non-state actors, by terrorists, by whole lot of bad guys. So India has to pull its weight. And you rightly brought out, for example, if you've seen the area next to the northwest Arabian Sea, Red Sea region, Gulf of Aden. Now the Houthis were there. Because of the Houthis' presence, piracy off the coast of Somalia again grew. So you had multiple challenges come in. That in turn ties up with Al Shabaab, which is a militant, fundamentalist Islamic group that operates there. Now it is because of Indian Navy's proactive deployment there, in a way that you don't walk into the political minefield, but you protect ships. You go to, the apart from the rescue of MV Rowan, which I think is hugely historic. People miss out. I would advise everyone to read how the Navy did that brilliant operation. But apart from that, there have been ships which were set on fire after missile attacks. We have put out the fire. We have rescued flooding. When foreign Navy ships have, not wanted to go in, we have waded in there and, rescued people. So be it rescue of fishing craft, be it stopping flooding and fire in bigger ships, being rescuing ships that were hijacked by the pirates. I think we've done a whole lot of heavy lifting in, constabulary and maritime security operations just in that region. And like that, there are other regions in the world. So in some cases, जैसे with Seychelles, with Mauritius, with Maldives, we do the EEZ patrolling of their countries. With other countries like Indonesia, Myanmar, I think recently Bangladesh also, Malaysia, we do coordinated patrols where both of us together patrol in these areas. So obviously, I mean, if you see, I can, Adi, I can go on, like, apart from ship visits, we are also recently, I'm sure you are aware that Indian Navy ship Nistar was in Singapore, and we were showcasing our new submarine rescue capabilities in a show that had more than 40 nations India, Japan, Singapore, we were showcasing this new capability. So apart from simply having ships deployed against the bad people or bad activities, we do humanitarian assistance. जैसे आपने कहा, this region suffers lots of humanitarian issues. We do evacuation of personnel who are caught in trouble spots, and then we also showcase our new abilities. So we are a contributor, or we help in provision of global goods. तो ये सब इंडियन नेवी कर रही है आज। पर आपकी बात सही है, इसके लिए और जहाज चाहिए, इसके लिए मेंटेनेंस टॉप नॉच चाहिए। और मैं समझता हूँ आजकल ये हो रहा है, पर एज अ
The need
नेवी
for more is always there.
फंडामेंटलिस्ट, I'd always want more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The need for more is always there, sir. There's no question.
Yeah, yeah.
Sir, capability enhancement, so there is no question, and we keep covering that on the channel as far as ye ship order, why, ye cheese, why, ye, why, wo, why. Let's start from the west to east, sir. You've got the Mediterranean, ठीक है, जहाँ पर टर्की के साथ आप, obviously you have issues. वहाँ पर you're doing some exercises with Greece and stuff like that. You have a major port in Haifa, which belongs to an Indian interest, right, which is important for us. Then the Red Sea area comes in, and then the Persian Gulf. Arabian, we've pretty much discussed what are the challenges there. So when you have that long an arm going towards Greece, and this is now twice a year, thrice a year, there are ships in the Mediterranean. Uh, so is this going to be one of our permanent presence or semi-permanent presences going forward? Because our, as the trade routes and all that, export routes into the Middle East and all that will come across. So we will also need security of our routes. So how do you think the eastern flank, the western flank is going to open out as far as the maritime links are concerned towards, especially towards the Mediterranean Sea?
See, I think fundamentally and philosophically, the Navy's point of view has been clear.
Hmm.
Wherever our interests lie and wherever our interests are threatened, the Indian Navy must be in a position to put ships there. Now, obviously, the political, authorities, the political apex will determine where these interests are threatened, and you have brought out some of those just now in your question. So, certainly, today we have blue water capable ships. What does that mean? It means you have ships with long legs, you have ships with good endurance, you have ships with great deal of organic capabilities. You have many of them carrying one or two helicopters. You have good command and control abilities. You have a range of specializations and professions from medical doctors, executive branch people, flyers. They have boats. They have perhaps mini operation theaters. They're capable of carrying HADR blocks. So our mission deployed blue water ships often have a range of abilities. Now we put them in. Moment you have a blue water ship, blue water as a long like ship, then either she can go on her own to far distances, or she gets fueled somewhere, and therefore Navy also has increased the number of fueling ships. We have a range of agreements with various countries for quick turnaround, what are called OTR agreements, OTR ports, so that a ship can put in quickly, just take some, ration tel pani as we say, and then move out so that she can be in the theater of operation or action. Now, are we seeing more presence in Mediterranean? Well, I think over last few years, the Indian Navy ships have been visiting Mediterranean, perhaps on way to Western European nations and all that. But if our requirements require us to stay in the eastern part of Mediterranean, which becomes a volatile region, then perhaps we can do it. As you brought out recently, we had ships visiting Greece and Cyprus. Mind you, about 20 years ago, when we had to evacuate people from Beirut, again Indian Navy ships were involved there. So, in fact, that is the flexibility that the Navy provides. That moment you have a region, and which region can come to boil when you don't know, so you place a navy there. Our interests you brought out, obviously there are economic corridors, there are connectivity corridors, and all of these need an undergirding of security, in which Indian Navy will play one part, certainly. So I do take your point that if there is a crisis today, the Indian Navy is capable of placing not just ships but perhaps aircraft and other units there.
When you look at the eastern side, sir, we have the big, of course, game of China, which is I mean, it calls itself a near Indian Ocean power. I don't know what the hell does that mean, but in any case, he's been saying that for the past 10 years. Um, it sends a ship or two across once in a while, especially when we are doing a missile test and everything like that. And people, of course, have this idea that only China does that. I'm not wanting to get into technical details, but we also do similar activities in the South China Sea. We also send our so-called spy ships over there, and there's that competition which keeps ensuing. But one of the biggest moves that India made is the Malacca Strait with the Singaporeans right now. What is the significance of that? Of constant patrolling there, and of course the request from that region of countries to give data into the Indian Ocean Center in Gurgaon. That this is a demand that, okay, please give us more data so that we can help you secure this area even more. So what is the focus here? Is this now of expansion expansion of footprint which is happening in the east?
The short answer is yes, but since you have, you're, you're such a you're such a clever person when it comes to questions that you ask three or four of them in one go. So let me try and unpack them. The first part, yes, I mean, since the seas are global commons and countries can send ships where they want if they have the capability, the issue is not of Chinese ships in the Indian Ocean versus our ships in South China Sea. You're completely right. We send our ships, and our ships operate in South China Sea. In fact, as we speak, INS Sayadri is, I think, exercising with the Korean Navy, and very much it's a part of its visits to the Indo-Pacific. And Eastern Fleet ships send every year almost. We have few visits to the Indo-Pacific region. The issue, Adi, is not merely of presence, but it is of intention. I mean, if you see, the Indian Navy has not really commented, other than saying that, suggesting that Indian Ocean is busy. We have not immediately bolted or sat upright when it comes to the American or the European ships or other country ships or even Russian ships. The problem about Chinese ships and being sent there, as you say, is either sometimes they're operating in the fringes of what you can call as lawfare, sometimes there is a seagoing militia, sometimes they're spying on certain aspects of what you're doing, and most importantly, they are, they are in bed with, or they are friendly with people who are hostile to you. So that makes their moves a little suspect in our eyes every time, because they seem to be fishing in troubled waters, whether it is in Maldives or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Myanmar, or for that matter Pakistan. So it's not simply about the ships coming there, it is also about the intent. So now, therefore, look against that. What should India do to secure its interests while recognizing the global nature, or the commons nature of the seas? One, of course, as we said, we put our ships, our aircraft, our other units in South China Sea, in Western Pacific, as required. But our commitment is to a open Pacific, to a Pacific where there's freedom of navigation. So when we do, for example, our exercises with Philippines, as we did 2 or 3 months ago, or when we cooperate with Vietnam, I think it is restating that fundamental moral principle. What are the other activities in that direction? Obviously, some of the activities of Quad reinstates that philosophy. But more importantly, what we have done now in Malacca, in terms of China, in terms of Singapore and Japan, sort of dialogue, is to establish closer friendship with people there. Japan is one country, and I think Japan is a country with whom, I mean, it figures in the top tier of our defense relationship and our strategic partnership. Similarly, Australia relationships, I think, in the last 20-25 years, from a country that was feeling threatened by India having aircraft carrier, there's much closer partnership now than before. Also, our friendship in recent years with Vietnam, with Philippines, for example, tries to try. You know, these are games on a chessboard, so you got to do with what pieces you can. And I would think one of the important things we are doing now, therefore, is the Car Nicobar transshipment port also, which can operate as sort of, you know, your most forward, be an attractive destination for transshipment of cargo, while also operate right there at the doorstep to Malacca, if you will, so that you can keep that area under surveillance. So you need to do a range of activities, and Malacca is very, very important from that point of view, because that is the bridge, the corridor, the door, whichever way you want to view that.
So when you see, when you see the region right now and the way, uh, if there is something which is gonna happen in the South China Sea, obviously blowbacks are gonna come this way. You've got tensions with Taiwan. US keeps saying yes, no, yes, no. Nobody knows what it exactly is going to do. Uh, the balance of power in this region is under context, under question. Of course, nobody challenges our dominance in the Indian Ocean. China does come finger around here and there and a bit, but everybody knows India dominates this region. Indian Navy dominates this entire region. But what we see right now, before going to the South China Sea, we have a focus on the Bay of Bengal,
Yeah.
right? The Russians want to get a base here, where we have also done a logistical agreement that aajo aajo koi baat nahi. The Americans have did what they did in Bangladesh. They, um, you know, we know the covert activities that are taking place in the Chittagong area and all that stuff. So there is some presence here where they want to kind of probably open a front to China, finger around in Myanmar. Different story altogether. Bangladesh again comes out. Sorry, the Bay of Bengal comes out to be a big thing. Now, when I looked at a map, sir, of American presence, their lily pads and their this and that and the other, their military bases. These two regions don't have anything. Curiously, these are big gaps that they've got. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And that's where I see Gwadar and Pasni right now in Pakistan, and I see Chittagong. So they're trying to bring in that presence here by creating chaos. What do you think is going to be our counter move to something like this, or do we really need to counter this because we know what we are doing? It's our area. Anybody else sits there, fair enough. It's not much you can do because it's international waters. Is that how we're going to look at it? Because it's other sovereign nations also. So what do you think should we do?
See, it's a combination of both aspects that you say. You see, the seas are fluid mediums, so you must regard them either like a football field, if you will, or as a kabaddi square, or as a chess square. So players will keep moving up and down. Now, you brought out that Indian Ocean is our strength area, it's our backyard, rightly so. I don't want to go into numbers of our being strongest navy and things like that, because number crunching sometimes can lead you to very awkward conclusions. But the fact is that we are strong, and we're strong not just because of the numbers. There's an established tradition of professionalism of what we have showcased in wars, in constabulary, in HADR operations, and all that. So it's not because I was in the Indian Navy, but we have seen and shown that. And mind you, a professional navy can be a very good deterrence in itself, because you know, you would not want to go head up against it unless you really have to, right? So what else? So there will be this couple of players, if it can be called the football analogy or kabaddi analogy. There will be a couple of people coming into your backyard, and you in turn will be sending a few people into their side. Okay, so there are two or three ways to look at it. Why didn't the Americans or other people not have interest in this region? I guess it. You see, one, of course, apart from the fact that US or any hegemonic power can't be everywhere, it's also a question of what were their interests. They had serious interests in Gulf region, not just because of its political volatility, but because of Israel, because of energy, because of so many other things. You know, and the Bay of Bengal, which had Myanmar, Bangladesh, Malaysia, India, Andamans, Indonesia, perhaps did not attract them as much. Will it be more attractive to them in future? You see, there is a certain Western neighbor of ours who is enticing countries with rare earths and energy finds and stuff like that. So tomorrow, hypothetically, if this region were to become enticing for something, perhaps. But you are right. In many ways, the Bay of Bengal, which because of its geography, because of India's positioning and our place there, both in Vishakhapatnam and in Andaman and Nicobar Island, the horseshoe sort of structure, places us in a very, very strong position. Does it mean we don't care? Not at all. Because people will meddle, and you've already seen what's happening in Bangladesh. Myanmar often is vulnerable to many of these issues. Now we have our interest from connectivity, we have our interest in terms of other sort of maritime corridors, and we certainly want to enhance our relationships with countries in this region. So we can't afford to ignore this. At the same time, other countries, and I mean other hegemons or superpowers, if they want to operate in this region, they will have extended logistics lines. You know, unless of course they decide to have bases here, which is what in some ways they are endeavoring to do. Now, having bases or places in this region may work in peacetime. It doesn't necessarily, in my very humble opinion, it doesn't necessarily always work in wartime, because you're actually also rendering yourself more vulnerable. You are making, I think it was about Midway or something that Yamamoto said, that let America's dagger on my throat become my dagger on America's throat. So frequently, when you have another country jump and come up front to do kabaddi, it also reduces your
Uh,
problem finding out who is your antagonist and why. So
that's
we
there.
will not ignore it, but I think the issue there is manageable.
When you see the very interesting sort of a game which is being played in terms of the areas of influence of certain regions, and Indian navies, if you just plot the patrols of Indian navies, you'll get to know exactly what it is. um, and we've kind of discussed that in the show. So towards the end, my question would be, sir, what should we now do for the navy? What is needed for us to do? There's a lot of Atmanirbharta. The navies come out and said we will not be buying any more uh, ships from abroad. We'll make our own engine. And there's one thing. I mean, I must say, I'm an Air Force brat, but I'm really proud of the Navy on that one fact that they design their own stuff. They've invested in that particular aspect of it, which the Air Force and the Army kind of missed out for a long time. And today, I mean, the past couple of years, they've started doing that, and a lot is coming out from there also. But the Navy has a step ahead in this particular aspect. So, what does the Navy need to do? So, if you can surmise this discussion, and we can talk about capabilities, we can talk about uh, strength increase, we can talk about ships, we can talk about, I mean, the upcoming challenges. For example, Operation Sindoor. Navy unfortunately didn't have a role, but Navy had a silent role to play. It was not in firing in anger. The next time, as everybody said, it'll be firing in anger.
Yeah.
So, what do we need to see in the Navy now going forward?
Okay. See, let me cover the good points first. And as you brought out Operation Sindoor, uh, it is 60 years since 1965. Uh, but I really am happy, and everyone today recognizes in 1965 when Navy didn't get into action, everyone said what the Navy was doing. Today, there is a recognition that if the Navy didn't get into action, it is paradoxical as it might seem, because we come higher up the escalation ladder, and if the Navy had really gotten in, the scale, scope, magnitude of the conflict would have gone up. And perhaps, as it was, is it the DJMO who recently said that Pakistan might have faced hell if Navy had got into action. So I think there is a recognition across the board, political, diplomatic, bureaucratic apex, that the Navy gets you a lot of strength. I think this fact must be recognized with no disrespect to my sister services, that while the armies and air force maintain regional peace, the navies get you global influence, because ultimately the world faces, irrespective of how it is, the world faces a set of challenges. Whether you consider climate change at one end, you see geopolitical volatility at other end, and a whole lot of things in between. Many of those things will play at sea or from sea, and it is actually going to be some sort of a coalition. We don't want to use the word alliance, coalition or partnership of navies that are going to come into play in resolving these global issues. So what do we see from here? I think there is a very good recognition in the apex, but certainly its translation into three or four things. One is, as again I said, I'm a bit of navy fundamentalist, so we need. I'm not getting into number crunching कि इतने aircraft carriers चाहिए, इतने nuclear submarines चाहिए, but I think we would all be happy with, force levels that do not dwindle, that maintain, because remember that's one place where China has a huge sort of advantage, and as she starts putting in more and more units, then the advantage you have in Indian Ocean today might not be there. So we need a certain amount of, let's say, greater recognition of the need for accretion of units, of budgetary strength, greater strength towards maintenance. Now you brought out about Atmanirbharta and what we are doing, and you're right. It is good, not simply because it makes us strategically far more self-reliant. It's also great advertisement in defense diplomacy. You can become an arms marketer, arms exporter, and you also can give lots of encouragement to your own industrial ecosystem. So the second thing we need to do is enhance the export orientation of naval equipment. I mean, we need buy-in not just from the government, from industry, everyone, because your own navy and your country will prosper if you can start exporting much more. Today we are self-reliant for our sake, but we should start exporting ships or whatever you manufacture, or items and things like that, to countries. I mean, what should be the terms of that is a different issue. The third, again, the government this year has given huge amount of encouragement and incentive to shipbuilding, commercial shipbuilding. Now, Adi, that's very important. No country can be a maritime power based on the strength of navy alone.
Yeah.
A merchant marine acts as your standby navy. It is capable of providing a range of services, from surveillance to, evacuation of people, to amphibious carriers, to humanitarian assistance, and often the strengths and spin-offs of one industry go into another. So we need a massive investment. The government is encouraging that, but in domestic shipbuilding, you know see, the Indian Navy has been like Virat Kohli or Sachin Tendulkar. It's been the big player in the batting order, but you need the rest of your maritime elements to come in now. you know so these would be about three or four interests, and overall, uh, uh, though I've said that there is a buy-in, I think, from think tanks, universities, educational universities, academias, certain layers of diplomacy, foreign policy establishment. Often they don't realize how useful navies can be in pursuit of your foreign policy. I think that is also needed a bit more. So I think overall, certain traction to some of these initiatives by the Navy, I think will help go a long way.
I'll just take one more question. So we've done this, Combined Defense Services Command in Andaman and Nicobar Island. There's a major build up there. There's a major build up in the Lakshadweep as well. And there's always a debate between the Navy. I've seen it in multiple circles: aircraft carrier versus submarines. I think the choice, in my opinion, right now has been made for submarines at the moment because of the requirement of extension of legs, which is there, and there is also the addition of the INS Jatayu and the base in um, the future base coming up in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. So this is obviously the next 5 7 years. Do you see the third and the fourth aircraft carrier coming across post that?
Well, to answer your question, I think comparison of submarines and aircraft carriers is completely apples and oranges. One, of course, we must remember that they are on the same side; they are not competing
Yeah,
against each
yeah, yeah, yeah.
other.
But
Our submarines
it's
our
also not a
submarines
final.
will hopefully go against the enemy aircraft carrier. I'm sure you know that. The point is you need both to make a balance. Now it's one thing to argue and say, look, we've got certain sums of money, so we got to create our maritime strategy around that. That's a fair point. But I think as far as the Indian Navy's own document, strategy, thinking, and orientation has been, it has always been centered on an aircraft carrier right from 1947 until now, without sacrificing the need for a balanced fleet, including submarines.
Yeah,
So we don't see the two in conflict with each other. So when you create Jatayu or when you create a base in Andaman, you are adding to your range of capabilities, but you are not necessarily stating that INS Andaman and Nicobar will replace INS Virat or Vikramaditya. So,
yeah,
so the two are completely not comparable. As far as I see, I mean, see the Indian Navy's planners for long, and not many know that we talk of three carrier navy in terms of selling it, one off each seaboard and one in refit sort of thing. But that's actually a little very simplistic, because your aircraft carriers are supposed to be flexible. They're not meant to be limited to one seaboard. You could have both of them in the scene of action. You could have third somewhere else. So the Navy's planners or Navy's conceptual thinkers have always thought in terms of two replaced by four aircraft carriers. And some of these I have myself said. So I certainly see the need and requirement for a third and even a fourth aircraft carrier. Now, whether our budget will permit that or not, and how do we go about it, is a different issue altogether. But it doesn't mean that I cut my aircraft carrier budget and put it in a submarine budget. That's not how it would happen. We will use both, we'll operate both, and we will have plans for deploying both.
yes, sir. That's very insightful, sir. Thank you so much for the time. Of course, this has been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope this is not the first of the many. This is not the first of the last. We should have many more conversations. I think the sensitization of the maritime area is very important for all of us to learn. A pleasure connecting with you for the first time, sir. And as I said, hope to see you again back very soon.
Thank you. I must record my own pleasure and honor. I think Def Talks is one of the most popular podcasts in defense and military affairs. So it's wonderful being with you. And like you said, let's hope that this is the first of many collaborations that we'll have together. And all the best to you. You're doing a wonderful, wonderful job in spreading awareness and literacy about defense and security issues, which are always a little complex, little nuanced, and in a country like ours, which has various competing issues that attract attention, I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To the audience, please like, subscribe, and of course, support the channel. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.